look at it out of your own reason. Is not the quality of your life just the quality of your perception? If your mind is a hell, life is a hell. If your mind is well balanced and without conflict, you stroll through this life gracefully. So the quality of your perception is the quality of your life. Now this is the great conflict that exists, that as human beings we must act in the world. There's no human being, unless you're in a coma or unless you're already dead. Otherwise, there's no human being in this world who is not subject to action. All of us must act in the world. The question is, can you act in the world and yet at the same time your inner well-being is well established? Now, while we're acting in the world, we are manufacturing much suffering in the process. And if we look very deeply into it, just look at this, because I want you to understand that basically your freedom and your suffering, it's all your own doing. It's all our own creation. Now, the external world, we have no total control over the information that it gives to us. That is beyond our hands. What's happening in millions of other people's minds on the planet, that's also not in our hands. But you take any situation, okay? Basically, what is it that's involved in our perception? First, there's stimulus. Any kind of stimulus. Eyes see something, ears hear something, nose smells something, tongue tastes something. You're looking at the tree, that is a stimulus. Or maybe, let's say you're not with open eyes looking at the tree. You're sitting with eyes closed. The thought of the tree emerges in your mind. That is still stimulus. So that's the first step, stimulus. What then happens? This stimulus is taken by the electrical currents in the body, presented to the brain, and then there's a reaction. What will be that reaction? It's just whatever is your programming. Why is it one person, when he's put in situation, it's his programming to be stressful? No matter what's happening in the outside world, even if he's in a very calm atmosphere, within himself he's very much stressful. Because that is his programming. Our programming is literally like a set of instructions. So, if fear is part of your programming, fear arises. Anger is part of your programming, anger arises. If love arises. If it's peace, quietness and contentment, peace, quietness and contentment arises. But then, and the reaction is very much mechanical. We have no control over the reaction. It's just like an automatic mechanism. But from the reaction, then we have a third step, which is your response. The response to the reaction. So hate arises within you, for example. Do you become entangled? Do you become blinded by it? Or can you learn to remain an observer at a distance? So I'm saying most of the quality of our life is created by this third step. How are you responding to life? And I've always said this, that the idea of response and responsibility are so deeply, intimately connected. When you're responding to life consciously, only then are you truly taking responsibility for your own well-being. So, is it possible to create such a condition in the human mind and body that regardless of external circumstances, your inner well-being is well settled? Wouldn't this be a beautiful way to act in the world? You act in the world according to your desire. Nothing happens out of it. You're still well balanced and centered within yourself. Your desire is fulfilled, still you're well balanced and centered within yourself. So for that, we just need a small shift inwards in a different direction. It's a bit like this. There was a Zen master. His name was Hakuin. And Hakuin, he was a well-known master in a small village. And one day a girl became pregnant. A very young, beautiful girl. And the parents were shocked when they heard the news, So they continued harassing her, insisting, tell us who is the father of the child. Finally, in a state of desperation, she just said, first name that came into her mind, she said, Hakwin. So then the parents, being totally furious, went to the door of the master. They said, you're the one who's impregnated our young girl. When the child is born, you're the one who has to take care of her. We want nothing else. We want nothing to do with this child. Then Hakwin, he simply, quietly said, is that so? So the news was traveling around the village, and his reputation was totally ruined. Finally, several years later, the girl revealed the truth, that the father of the child was one boy who works in the marketplace. So when the parents heard the news, of course, they were totally ashamed and embarrassed. So several years later, they came to the door of the master. They told him, we found out finally what is the truth. Please forgive us for our actions. Then the master said, even though at this point his whole reputation has been destroyed, in the same quiet manner, he simply said, is that so? And this was he was known to have this general attitude towards life, even in situations which would appear like a disaster. He would just quietly say, is that so? This reflects a mind which is very deeply quiet, calm, silent, and contented. So, if you're moving through the noise of the marketplace, and yet within yourself it's as though you're in the deep silence of the Himalayas, to me this is the real test that your balance is well established. I know maybe some of you have heard of stories of yogis who are living in mountains and caves, or maybe somewhere isolated from the world in a forest. To me, that's not, and suppose you live in that kind of environment, you feel very calm and peaceful. But just see, if the person is put in the middle of, let's say, New York City, and he gets very much disturbed, that means the source of his silence does not emerge from within. It was an illusion created from the external environment. You don't just have one personality, you have many personalities. When you talk to a friend, you show one face, one kind of mask. You're talking to an enemy, I hope you don't have any. Well, one face, another kind of mask. To communicating with a stranger, yet again another face, another kind of mask. In reality, we cannot really say we are individuals. Do you know that the word individual basically means indivisible? But we are not. Within ourselves, we are very deeply fragmented, cut up in so many bits and pieces. And in our everyday life in the world, just see, there's always a conflict. Your head is saying one thing, your heart is saying something else. Your instinct is yet giving another story, as if your mind is surrounded by so many different voices. So in the midst of this chaos, what is one to do? One must learn the way of silence and balance. So, examine what's happening in your experience. I want you to watch very closely. Any thought that arises, any emotion that arises, any mental impression that arises, where does it arise? In the open space of pure consciousness, of pure awareness. So awareness is like the background in which everything is happening in our experience. Just like open space, empty space which contains all the stars, planets, and galaxies, your awareness is very much like empty space. But in your everyday experience, do you experience your life just as empty, pure consciousness? Or do you experience your life through this narrow lens of the ego? So the ego is basically an illusion. And just see, any time you've ever suffered in your life, your ego is always directly connected. To live a life governed by your ego, basically this is a recipe to live your life out of fear.